Yes, if you're still eating, feel free. And if you're not, if you could return to your seats, it'd be great. Have we lost people at lunch? Is this Trinidad and Tobago? It is. Trinidad and Tobago is not a real place, as that's my new hashtag. It is not a real place. If students are here, I think they have to be here. Yeah. We're doing a TTIGF. All right, I've been reminded that the TTIGF is open for membership, technical community. So if you have an organization that is involved in technical issues, ICT issues, and so on, you can apply to join. There's a link on the website. Judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Charles Bob Semple, Deputy CEO, National Information and Communication Technology Company Limited, you may know them better as IGov TT, and Mr. Rishi Maraj, Executive Director, EquiGov Institute. Please join me on the stage. Oh, you're already there. I guess you preempted me. All right, so without further ado, I'll hand over to Glenn to begin this afternoon session. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if it's, thank you. I'm not sure if it's better to have the session before lunch or after lunch. So you'll have to sort of get into the mood of things. I know you had a great lunch and it's going to take you a little while to settle in, but I promise you, you'll have a lot of stimulating thoughts to share with you to digest your food. But a couple of things on myself on technology that doesn't get reflected in my volunteer work. From an entrepreneurial point of view, I was very interested in technology, and one of the projects that I was responsible for implementing in North America was the Beijing wind-up radio. I'm not sure if anybody knows what that is. Did anybody ever heard of the Beijing wind-up radio? Okay, it was a self-powered wind-up radio invented in South Africa by a guy who was a bit of a character from England, and it got manufactured in Cape Town. So we manufactured it in Cape Town, and it was interesting because the technology needs grease. And you have to wind it up, and then it slowly unwinds, and it plays your AM, FM, and shortwave radio. The first shipment got delivered into England in December or January. Anybody have an idea what happened to them? Would they work? They didn't work because the grease they used is fine in South Africa, but the grease that's designed for sub-zero weather doesn't work. So I had to source out and bring with me grease from Calgary, which is hard for you guys to understand, but it's probably about minus 40 Celsius in Calgary right now, so very, very, very cold. So the aviation grease is what's required to lubricate the mechanism. So we introduced that radio before Y2000, the Y2000 or 2K phenomenon, because everybody thought that everything would stop working. In fact, in China, most of the administrators were put on planes while Y2K happened, because if they didn't do what they said they would do, if the planes dropped out of the sky, they were going to be in the plane. So we implemented that technology as a concept, and then it's actually gone on from there. The second technology I was involved with is before the one laptop per child. Everybody knows about that, right? We had a similar called, if you look up Ink Media, that's my handle on Twitter. We implemented a small little netbook. And if anybody remembers netbooks for 10 minutes, they were quite the rage. And you never see, I don't know where they all went, because they're all gone, you know, so we invested a lot of money in that. So I have a little bit of a record of working with industry. And I brought along with me, because Dev bugged me so much, is my Bluetooth device, which if your cell phone's not working and you want to communicate with your friends, you have a device here that you actually wear, and you connect with, you can see all the guys in the room, they're suddenly interested. You notice that? They were bored as hell until I started showing a technology. Then look at them all smile. Look at these guys. And then you can communicate, and if you don't have your cell service with your smartphone, you can still set up a small mesh network. Right, Dev? Yep. We tested this in Cape Town a couple of years ago, but I'll leave this with you, Dev, so you can test it out. Okay, so that's a little bit of a story on my technology background, but I also have a bit of connection to the Caribbean. My wife's from Jamaica. In fact, she has the same last name as yourself. They came from Chennai, and when they came over as indentured servants to Jamaica, I guess they were really intending to come here, because somehow they ended up in Jamaica, which we all know there's very few Indians. You know that as well. Very few Indians in Jamaica, but there's a few. But Guyana and Trinidad were the two areas that they were destined to land. So that's one of my small 35-year connection with the Caribbean. But I want to talk about this topic today, and then I'll walk through the bios as well. Okay, let me start off with trust in public institutions is defined as confidence in the actions of these institutions to do what is right and is perceived to be fair. According to OECD 2014, in countries across the globe under regimes of all types, such institutions are facing ever-increasing diminished trust from the citizens they are meant to serve. In fact, this is evident from subjective assessments, such as opinion polls, as well as behavioral indicators like declining voter participation in democratic elections. However, the application and adoption of technology to improve transparency, open data, and e-procurement accountability, that is, issue reporting, platforms, service delivery, and participation, that's electronic voting registration, among others, can create new avenues for building this increased relationship of trust between governments and citizens. In this session, we're going to discuss the benefits, we're going to talk about the limitations, such as this technology enables, and the potential opportunities and practice that can present for Tobago and Trinidad. So I just flipped it around that time. One of the studies that was involved with Cornell, we surveyed each of the cities around the world. It was a group of us researchers, and we looked at the websites of locations around the world, and we looked at them in terms of accessibility. Could you access the politicians? Can you post a comment? Was there transparency? Was there find out what the bylaws were? And it was really amazing, the inconsistency from location to location. And the best location I found in our research was Melbourne. They actually had a process of actually connecting with the politicians, and they in turn responded, because that was part of the issue. Not just emailing them and commenting, but getting their feedback. So we'll have to see how our panel stacks up on how your country compares to other locations. So let me just give you a little bit of background, and I'll read you the bio, and then I'm going to ask you, each of you, a little bit of facts that are not in your bio. Okay? Okay, let's start off with Master Christy Ann Morris-Allen. She's the Court Executive Administrator, Judiciary of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. She has the distinction as the first Court Executive Administrator of the Judiciary of Trinidad and Tobago, having first held the position from 1998 to 2005. She returned to this position in June 2017. Prior to her return, she served as a project lead in a juvenile court project and planned and implemented the Children's Court of the Family and Children's Division of the Supreme Court. She is an attorney at law, a professional court administrator, and a project management professional, PMP. In over 40 years in court management, court reform, and judicial reform planning, design, and implementation. During the judicial career, she has served the organization in the capacity of Assistant Registrar and Marshal of the Supreme Court, Registrar and Marshal, as well as Master of the High Court. She has introduced professional and modern court administration, best practice, innovative solutions to effectively streamline these operations. She has established relationships and networks with government agencies and departments at home and abroad that are essential in achieving the judicial goals. Accordingly, she is well respected both regionally and internationally. In fact, I found out she grew up in part in Montreal. So carrying on, she has conceived and pioneered the establishment of the Family Court in Trinidad and Tobago, the computerization of the courts in Trinidad and Tobago, and the introduction of computer-aided transcription and court audio digital recording of the Caribbean region, among other initiatives. She was the chairman of various committees and projects, including Trinidad and Tobago Judicial Sector Reform Project Committee and the Vision 2020 Subcommittee in the Regional UWI and USAID Caribbean Justice Improvement Project, as well as the vice chair of, carry on, of the Judicial Review Committee. She co-authored the Gurley Report. And lastly, she has held membership on various committees to create the Children's Authority and review and amend the package of children's legislation. She has designed the judge's first continuing education seminar, and together with her court administrative team, developed the Judicial Education Initiative. She was one of the team of 5 colleagues who drafted the Mediation Act, was also instrumental in drafting and implementing the city proceedings rules that were in 1998, and introduced the civil docket system and management by judicial support teams. What did they do without you before? What's a fun fact about yourself?
What's a fact about myself?
Yeah, something fun.
I'm a mother of 3.
Mother of 3? Okay. Okay. Let me carry on with Charles. Charles Bob Semple, Deputy Chief Executive Officer, the National Information and Communication Technology Company. Charles is an accomplished and results-based professional with notable success directing and project leading to a broad range of corporate ICT systems. With more than 19 years of ICT experience, Charles is a certified project management professional who acquired 2 master's degrees and an MBA in business and a master's in science. He has a distinguished career spanning organizational restructuring, project management, software development, systems, re-engineering, database design, administration. He is passionate about the strategic implementation and use of computerizing technology, policies, and systems, and seeks to utilize the approach at iGov.TT and across the ministries, agencies, and departments that the company serves. So, Charles, a little bit of a fun fact about yourself.
I love to play percussion, and I am a father of 2 and the founder of an adventurous called Fusion in Trinidad and Tobago, running the forest. So I love the forest outdoor adventures.
Sounds like more fun than kids. Okay, Rishi, last but not least, he is a holder of the BSc and a Master's in Science and Government from the University of West Indies. His research paper on MSc focused on curbing corruption, comparative examination of the anti-corruption agencies in Trinidad and Tobago, Hong Kong, and Australia. He currently is the CEO of Disclosure Today, award-winning social governance initiative whose mission is to advance transparency, empower citizens, fight corruption, and promote citizen engagement in public sector decision-making through the utilization of civil technology. Additionally, he is the executive director of EquivGov, right? EquivGov, Institute of Boutique Consulting and Training Firm specializing in data privacy management, public and private sector governance, and monitoring and evaluation, as well as a consultant for Pinka Consulting Limited. For over 30 years of experience with both the public and civil society sector, he has considerable knowledge and experience of the workings of government, both from our operational and policy aspect, as well as a unique insight into the challenges faced by civil society organizations trying to impact civic change. During a period from 2005 to 2012, he was the senior officer in charge of the Freedom of Information Unit. He has provided technical advice in the passage and partial proclamation of the Data Protection Act in 2011 and participated in the drafting of the model legislation in freedom of information and data protection through the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. Mr. Maharaj is a certified member of the Canadian Institute of Access and Privacy Professionals and the International Association of Privacy Professionals. Okay, your turn. What's your fun fact?
Father of 2 young girls, and I actually just built my first e-commerce website.
Okay.
I still
By
like
myself.
I still like Charles's fun fact better. I'm just going to move over there. Well, this is great. We got a great panel, and we're going to actually delve in, and there's no neutral technology, as you all know. So I'm looking at the fact that each of you had practical experience in terms of the implementations that you did in, with the political, the bureaucratic sector. But as we all know, technology is a double-edged sword. Okay. Sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't, and it all depends on not only the implementation, is how it's interpreted. So let's go through each of you, and I'll start maybe going from left to right. Sure. So Charles, if you can start off, what is your straightforward experiences with implementing technology? What were some of the challenges? And then maybe after we go through, and then we'll go through, digging deeper into the inner workings of technology implementation.
Yeah. Well, I was a software developer for lots of years, and what I found, one of the biggest challenges is sometimes we don't start with the solution in mind. We start thinking of we're going to deploy technology to do rotate all the walls in the building. But we didn't do the analysis to determine if that is what is to be done to solve the problem that we are trying to solve. If it doesn't solve a problem, it serves no value, it has no purpose. That is one problem. The second is we don't communicate the problem properly to the stakeholders involved and the end users who are required to use the system and actually ensure that it is functioning properly. They're not aware, and as a result, there is no uptake. So I would limit it to communication and poor analysis in a nutshell.
Okay, great, thank you. Master?
I really think it has to do with acceptance orientation, especially in a place like the judiciary. The judiciary is an organization that is steeped in tradition. It works on a doctrine of binding precedent. So therefore, history is important, and maintaining history is important. So therefore, it's a very difficult organization to move forward. And therefore, when you seek to introduce something new, you have to think about it very carefully, and you have to think about the acceptance orientation approach and training. You also have to remember that it is an organization that has several different persons within it and several different publics. And some of our publics and some of our customers are not necessarily what we would accept as the best in society. So you're dealing with a wide range of people. So certain aspects of it can make implementation very difficult. We also have to bear in mind the fact that a judiciary is a place in which there are built-in interests, which are opposing interests. That is actually built into the judicial system and our system of laws. And so therefore, something that will work well for one side is really something that the other side does not want. So getting everyone to meet can be extremely difficult.
So before I move on to Ricky, do you think it has, based on the implementation that you've done, do you believe, and you may have done surveys of the public and feedback, and I guess if no one's saying anything, technically they're happy. So do you think the implementation, new reforms that you did actually has elevated the level of trust with the institution?
Yes, some most definitely have, but then it's a funny thing when you talk about trust in a judiciary, huh? Because one of the areas in which judiciaries are tested internationally is the question of public trust and confidence. And the other areas of performance management sort of feed into that. And those are access to justice, equality, fairness and integrity, independence and accountability, and expedition and timeliness. Now, when you have a justice system that is working expeditiously, you are building trust among certain persons within the society, but you're disadvantaging others. So because you always have those competing interests, the question then is it trust or is it now distrust because you are harming what I need? So it's quite it's not a two-edged sword, it's a many-edged sword when you're dealing with a judicial system.
So it's a dance.
It's a dance.
Is that how you hurt your neck? She was playing the percussion instrument. Okay.
And running in the forest.
Probably.
Chasing the three kids. Your turn.
Well, I'll come at this from the civic tech point of view,
Sure.
From a civil society point of view, and the challenges that we faced in trying to implement a technology solution to assist individuals to be able to get information from government. And the problems we faced was in terms of lack of trust, both in people wanting to access the information because they're unaware of what their rights are, understanding that technology can now be used as a means to be able to question your public institutions, to be able to hold them accountable for their actions. And then there's also lack of buy-in and trust from the public institution point of view in putting, I guess, the feeling of you're putting more burdens on them in terms of the queries that are going to be coming into them, and they're now having to answer to those queries that come from the general public. So, and what we found generally, not only in our case in Trinidad, but throughout the region and throughout the world, when I interact with other civil society organizations, is that most citizens, there's still a lack of distrust within public institutions. And technology could be a way to be able to bridge that gap, but there's still also a lack of trust in the technology, implementing technology properly to be able to allow them to be able to bridge the gap and not only hold government accountable and make them more transparent, but also have a space where civil society can now co-create and co-implement with government institutions and public institutions on the whole to be able to solve the problems that not only relate to them, but maybe a nationalistic in view.
Coming back this way, let's go back to the research you were doing, because you did this interesting research of 3 different countries. You had Trinidad, Hong Kong, and Australia. Totally different systems, totally different cultures. Is there anything from that cross-cultural comparison that you can share with us that actually indicated some higher levels of trust or higher levels of distrust? Was it baked within the history of those countries?
Yeah, I think we're looking at, especially if you want to implement something, and most of us in Trinidad and the Caribbean, we look at best practices. So you look at what other countries have implemented, and what I've realized, not only in the study that I've done for my master's research, but even subsequent after that, I worked in government and even in civil society, is that you need to understand it's not a one-cap-fit-all. And there are historical and cultural scenarios that you have to be aware of and understand that allow certain things to happen. So, for example, we like to look at what Singapore has done, but then you also need to understand from a Singapore point of view the kind of political system that they have in terms of how it operates. So when the Prime Minister says we're going to move forward to do this in 5 years' time, everybody gets their house in order to move forward to 5 years' time. There's very little, I mean, there may be debates and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, that's the goal that they're going forward. So there are cultural scenarios and history that you need to be aware of in implementing technology to solve issues within your country, in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And you need to be aware of not only what happens in those countries, but where you are at in terms of your stage of development. That maybe certain things cannot be implemented full scale, but you may need to scale back and implement on a certain levels as you move forward.
Okay. Master, in your experience in some of the projects, can you share what's, I don't want to get into too many details because I'm sure that it's confidential, but what are some of the high points you've encountered in terms of because you're a project management expert as well, which is unique because you're bringing that institutional knowledge, but you're a PMP as well. So is there some of the projects you've done that were highly successful and other ones that were just a pain in the ass?
Most definitely. There's really one in particular which, as time has worn on, we've realized, and the naysayers have realized how successful it is. But unfortunately, that they came to that realization long after they had killed it. and it's the project before which I had black hair. It was actually the introduction of computer-aided transcription in Trinidad and Tobago. And there were several factors that caused it to be the hullabaloo that it was. But the lesson that I learned out of it is an extremely important lesson. And that is that we presume that people want to be more efficient.
Right, right.
And it is important to remember that not everyone
Exactly.
wants to be more efficient. So hard lesson. Black hair went, and probably my project management in a sense. But it is, as I have come to handle other projects now, later on, I have taken that into account. So, for example, recently, we have implemented something that has been needed for years, and this is something that Charles would know about quite intimately. And that is the development of something we call court pay, which assists the average man and woman on the street so greatly. And it is also a system in which some people would not have liked it to be so efficient. But I think we were able to address the acceptance orientation quite differently. There were other challenges where that is concerned, and the whole thing is still being built. There were public sector challenges, public service challenges, where that was concerned. Moving the public service in a particular way is also a huge challenge when you're dealing with these types of implementations in the public space. But that is lesson learned a long time ago, lesson taken on board, and we have seen the smoother implementation.
You know, it reminds me of that expression, assume, that means ass of you and me. Right? Dev was telling me that he arranged a bus for you students, correct? And you guys thought you were going to a football game. Right? Surprise. Staying on the same theme, you must have some crazy experiences too, that in terms of the challenges that went along.
Yeah. We have some successes and we have lots of failures because just as being expressed, sometimes we go through projects assuming that we want to advance certain initiatives within. And I'll give you some examples. We were heavily involved at that time. Tracy was still close by with us with e-tax, for persons to be able to do tax. And there was an initiative with the use of the TTIGF ID, which is a unique identifier. So there is success, advance and ongoing. More recently, on the same portal, we introduced a chat facility where citizens could chat and receive instant feedback, and we deploy chatbots. So the chatbots will respond when citizens not there, when tellers not there, and we also communicate with email, and we're about to launch a virtual contact center. Additionally, we created in-house a payment gateway for IPO to utilize called GovPay TT, which we hope one day will flood everywhere in Trinidad and Tobago. However, in terms of the failures, we have some failures, and we have reached to points where ministries, agencies, or divisions would have asked us to do some things. We go through the entire RFP process, and we in the stages of evaluation, and we want to award, and then it's like, well, we're no longer interested. But these are realities that we have to deal with. The reasons differ at times. Sometimes there's no budget. Sometimes it's a change of focus. Other times it is a change of personnel within, and they have different priorities. And those things hit you hard because you would have dedicated blood, sweat, and tears, literally, with the hope of advancement, and then we have to start from block zero again. So when we get the good, we try to let it boost us up in preparation for when the inevitable ones that are not going forward will happen, because it happens with all projects.
So when you take on a project,
Yes.
you can have within the organization a real supporter, an advocate, a technology advocate or enthusiast,
Yes.
or you can have a Luddite. And for the benefit of the students here, a Luddite was someone in the 17th century who smashed all the machines. They didn't like Industrial Revolution. They were against technology. So we have Luddites today, which are really quite negative to implementing a lot of innovation technology. You may be coming into an organization and say, I get the greatest solution,
Exactly.
but you run across someone who is a decision maker and they're blocking you every step of the way.
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
He agrees with me.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Sheikh, did you have any experiences like that working with, not naming any names, but running into situations where you had, the greatest enthusiasts on board with you, the decision makers, they were running with you rather than against you, that you actually made it a breeze to implement the project? Or did you have situations where every step of the way you were being undermined?
Well, let me now throw off my civic society hat now and show my government hat. When I worked in government all those years back, I actually started working in the Ministry of Public Admin before IGov was NICT back then,
correct.
with Tracy and all those guys. So we all go back that way back.
Oh, he's laughing.
And yeah, I think what comes to mind are two main projects that we worked on that I was part of. I wasn't the lead project, but I worked on the project team. One was dealing with our system of pensions for pensioners within the government service. Right now, it's a very manual-based system in terms of when you retire. Sometimes it takes people a year and a half, 2 years before they can get their government pension. And we formulated a project back then to try to use technology as a way to boost and improve the efficiency. Well, like you said, some people don't want to be efficient in terms of when somebody retires, within maybe a month or less than a month, they can get their pension. But then you come up against the people who will throw in your face, well, this is the regulations, and these are the policies, and this is what the law says, so this is what we can't do, and these are certain things that we have to follow and focus on. And you get thrown back in that light. Another project I worked on, probably one of the few projects I'm proud to say I worked on initially in the formulation stages that I think now forms part of IGov is TTIGF. I was actually part of the team that actually started the whole TTIGF project way back when with Tracy and those guys. And the whole idea was to bring government service to your door, a one-stop shop for government service. And we tried to tote it to, I think at the time we envisioned, for example, the main problem was in order to get your electronic passport then, I don't think it's much of a problem as now as was then. You have to have your electronic birth paper. And we had on board in TTIGF at the time, working with the Ministry of Legal Affairs, a way for you to be able to apply for electronic birth paper without having to come to the Ministry of Legal Affairs or the Registrar House. We partnered with them and with TT Post to decentralize it. And we realized, well, one problem you had is a lot of people coming to get their birth papers, electronic birth papers, was because they needed to use it to get their electronic passport. So we said, well, let's bring in immigration. I said, okay, bring in immigration to, you remember, bring in immigration to the process. And ask the person when you're coming for why are you applying for your birth paper? And if the reason you're applying for your birth paper is because I want to get electronic passport, well, let's make an appointment for you one time and start that process. So from the time you get your electronic passport, your birth paper, you're halfway down the line in terms of getting it done. But obviously then again, you come across those blockers who block the system because they want to control the system, and they believe that you're taking it away from them and taking away the control that they have in terms of what their slice of the pie is. And it's about trying to manage people, manage relationship, build relationship. We got some projects on the TT Connect because of the relationships we were able to build, and then we got some projects were not on board because, again, you come across those who feel that you're touching their turf or taking their power.
If I may, and just a little follow through on something that Rishi said. And this is something in which I have found a great challenge in the public sector. And that is that what is thrown at you oftentimes is not law, but is either policy or long-standing procedures.
Tradition.
Precisely. And for some reason, there is a failure to recognize that law trumps your policy and your long-standing procedures. More often than not, the law is not the problem. What is the problem is but this is how we've always done it.
Exactly, yes.
And that is really, I think, where the challenge lies. Very often they don't go back to look at the law, They stop at, this is our procedure.
Yeah, correct.
It's interesting. Douglas Cardinal is a native architect that I know quite well in Ottawa, and he was one of the first architects in Canada that implemented computerization. Now it's pretty normal. Nobody does CAD everything's CAD. No one does anything by hand. But he got the same thing. It's the way we always done it. We had the boards, we did it by hand, and he got a lot of resistance, natural resistance. People want, it's hard for people to change.
Yeah.
What did he do? He came back Monday morning. There was no tables. It was only computers on their desk. Sometimes it takes a leader to say, this is what we're going to do, and whether you like it or not, you're going to swallow the bullet. Sometimes you lose some people. Sometimes you get some new, fresh blood. But, change is difficult for most people. And afterwards, they come back and say, hey, that wasn't so bad. And because we all still have a job. Because if they didn't learn CAD and other things, they'd probably be unemployed. So you take a country like Estonia. Estonia, everybody knows Estonia has e-democracy, and they're the leaders on e-government and e-democracy and many of the e-procurement strategies and stuff. How is it a country like Estonia is so well known and its MPs are very knowledgeable on this stuff? And I remember sitting on trying to persuade the government of Bulgaria to implement open source strategies because it would save a lot of money rather than buying Microsoft and other products. But, you're laughing too much, right? But it's true. But, you got to understand there's corruption involved. Like I remember Busak in one African country, I was just going to say the name, but I won't. It had 17 times the number of licenses than people living in the country. What the hell's going on here, right? So Estonia, how did they do it? And why can't Trinidad be the shining star just like Estonia? Any idea?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. What's the recipe?
Estonia generally, and Estonians, it's a cultural thing as well, their level of trust.
Okay.
And I mean, it's the thing that hit me. The fact that, for example, in Estonia, as you used to have in Montreal years ago, you can pick up a newspaper and you're expected to put your coin in. But you could just pick up the newspaper, and everybody puts their coin in when they pick up the newspaper. So therefore, there is an understanding and an element of trust and a belief that you are taken care of and that the system will work. Unfortunately, culturally, in the Caribbean, we don't have that level of trust. And I think that that affects it greatly in terms of what we can do and what we can't do. You know, from a judiciary perspective, the question, for example, of transparency is a very interesting one. When we talk about transparency, it, by and large, and it's usually presumed, that it helps public trust and confidence. And by and large, it does. But when you start to talk about government, governance, authority, trust and belief in authority, there is an intangible that we are not honest about. And that intangible is that in order to have that trust and belief in authority, there's a certain level of familiarity that you cannot have. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz and stepping from behind the curtain. And when the wizard was not known and not fully seen and transparent, there was a certain level of trust in the authority of the wizard. You remove the curtain and you realize that, hey, wait, the wizard is just like me. And therein lies the tale. Estonia has a history that you cannot ignore. And that is a history that has given it, for various reasons, a certain kind of belief in authority, whatever it is, whether it's a belief in authority, a fear of authority, a respect of authority, whatever. But that is not so in our histories.
But you know, they're coming from under the shadow of the Soviet bloc. The Stasi used to throw people in jail for anything if they had any dissenting views. So you would think, I'm not a historian, but I would think that they would be more suspicious of government, that they would be more suspect. You're taking my intelligence, how are you going to use it against me? Like what the Nazis did in the 30s, they took intelligence of everyone's ethnicity, so that's why they knew who was Jewish and where they were. So that information was used against them in the national census. So it's challenging. Now, there had to be a visionary. There had to be a politician or bureaucrats that said, we're going to, you know, we know the digital economy is where we want to go. We know that our public institutions are very important in this. And we're not, let's assume we're not going to satisfy everybody, right? Not everybody's going to be on board. But we got to have someone with a vision that sees that Trinidad wants a high mark in terms of cybersecurity. We have a high mark in terms of public trust. Where do we go from here? How do we get your politicians on board and your bureaucrats on board to make sure that the public has a high level of trust?
Well, this is a technology forum, but
Yeah.
but I would share something, right? And it may or may not be applicable here.
Yep.
When I was speaking with someone from Uruguay, I was like, you know, how y'all were able to increase your index so rapidly? And they actually disclosed it was an error, and the error was this: the president stated, by this year, 90% of our services will be available to citizens online. But it was a typo.
Oh.
Yes, but he already pronounced it. And so everyone started to act as, you know, now there was kickback, but everyone started to act. And next example, I went to South Korea. So I'm hearing the stories of South Korea and so on, but I'm analyzing the persons and trying to understand what caused the change, what caused the impetus for the change. So I asked them point blank, and they said they had no choice. They had no choice because the desire they had to change had to be higher than the desire to remain as is. To the south, they had Japan. Japan wants to kill them. To the north, there's China, and there's North Korea. And they were literally coming to wipe out South Korea. So they had no choice but to band together to advance the country. What we probably will help us is something that we have to band together for. Now, I keep saying oil and oil money is great. But what tends to happen at times, when mommy is always bringing food for me at the table, and then I sit back and I expect food to come, and then one day mommy said, well, I can't bring food for you. I have not taught myself, so we have not taught ourselves, this is private and public sector, we have not taught ourselves to be innovative. And the point was being made earlier, to use our own. Certain things developed locally, no, that's not good enough. That is not as good as something that was developed in the USA, or is not as good as something that is developed in Europe. Why? Why is that? Because we don't want to appreciate our own. And if we continue that mindset, and we continue with our legs crossed and expect mommy to bring food for us, and we don't learn to try to go and cook something for yourself, make something for yourself, and satisfy the desire you have within, and if our desire to sit here is stronger than our desire to get up and cook, then we'll sit here and die, because we're not going to get any food. And that is the reality. So while I am involved in technology, and we at IGovTT put in the infrastructure and everything in place and have everything churning, and we are trying to be the distractors by doing things to agitate and to get people thinking that let us get up and get. At the end of the day, people trump technology. At the end of the day, technology is never the problem. So I appreciate the technology discussion, but the real root cause of things that need to be addressed in terms of governance is not necessarily at the ICT level, is as us as a people, and this is for both private and public sector. Because in private sector, private companies don't trust each other. Even within the companies, a director don't trust the person working for them, and so on. The same thing applies to public sector. The same thing applies to our country. So my recommendation is, as a people, we need to desire to change rather than just sitting here. At times it requires an impetus. At times it requires a mistake, as Uruguay's case, for example, and at times it requires a crisis. Which is the solution for us here? I don't know, it might be a combination of all. But what I am doing in the meanwhile is ensuring the infrastructure is ready and in place.
You know that Uruguay legalized cannabis, right? Mm-hmm. Was he smoking at the time? Well, Canada legalized cannabis too. We're the second one, so I'm not sure what our government's smoking now either. But I think you're right on target on this, and it's talking about citizen empowerment, and they're going, fundamentally, if the government doesn't hear anyone grumbling or complaining, but it's us that has to actually push the agenda to move it up, because the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Correct,
so. Yeah. The citizen groups, ISOC, Trinidad, the TTIGF group, the MAG, the people here that are concerned about digital rights and concerned about e-democracy and want to see the empowerment, you guys have to say, take ownership of this and educate the politicians. One of the things we did in our city, they were proposing a smart city. We all know about smart cities, and that's the hallmark for a lot of the administrators that want to do it, but they really don't talk about privacy issues or digital rights. They're talking about access, and they're talking about companies having access to databases and stuff, and not other aspects, because oftentimes privacy isn't done by design, it's an afterthought. And what we need to start thinking about when you implement these smart technologies in the bureaucracy, that it's already incorporated. And the problem is, as Patrick and I were talking about, his students, which are highly technical, aren't necessarily taking the social and cultural and other economic ramifications. Right. Mm-hmm. Their eyes are on the prize. That's right. Mm-hmm. They're like this, and it takes us who are more eclectic saying, okay, wait a second here. No technology is neutral. right?
Yeah.
Everything has an impact.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, my watch stopped working because my battery died on it. So I have no clue. Is it still Friday? Yeah, okay. How much time? How much?
10 minutes to 3.
10 minutes, so how much more time before questions? 40 minutes? Are you serious?
Before questions.
Oh, okay. So you want to
Before
go
the end or before questions?
Did you want us to go to questions? Okay, you. Don't be so subtle. Just
Give
tell
us the
me.
time. We'll
Okay?
talk.
Don't be around the bush.
We'll talk for the whole 40 minutes.
Okay. Well, you know what? We can get back to if we exhaust the questions from the pool because we lost about a third, right? And I'm sure the students are anxious to hear about the score of that game, but we'll have to wait. Okay. Let's go to the group, and 1 sec, I'll get you first, okay? Dev, are you taking care of the questions on the YouTube, and you have some lined up as well? No? Okay. All right, so Dev, you too, right? You have a question? Okay, gentleman in the back.
Hi.
Sorry, your name?
Jarian Paul is the name. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the conversation around public trust. It's one of something that I kind of considered growing up. How could I make some sort of noticeable change, or how could you sort of advance things? And so I thought it was in the government, and then now I'm thinking it might be in business. But I have a question. This one is for Mrs. Morris-Allen. You spoke about court pay. How did you get the public to begin using the system, especially those who would have preferred or thought they preferred not to use such a system? What works and what didn't?
Okay, the things that worked was a combination of things, as a matter of fact. One part of it was the fact that we asked the judicial officers who were considering making the order to explain it to the litigants and ask them if they were interested in using it. And that was quite novel because, you know, judiciaries have a coercive kind of power. We can just say, hey, you take it. But we felt it was extremely important to have that discussion with the litigants. And I think that has worked quite well.
Did you have a follow-up question?
No, I was just interested to know.
Oh, there's a mic.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just was interested to know how you got it up and running. And so you're saying just that direct contact from the judiciary with the actual persons sort of opened their mind up to the idea.
Well, I mean, it wasn't the only thing in terms of how we got the entire thing going, because there are many different aspects. But in terms of getting the actual litigants to buy in, that was the way, of course, together with public education. But there were several other people and agencies that had to buy in. A lot of it was rather traumatic. But I think we have gotten there on the question of maintenance payments. And again, it's a trust and confidence issue. So therefore, there was an interesting exchange because we have kept an open feedback line between the court and the litigants, between court administration and the litigants. And it was so interesting. We did a little upgrade the other day so that, and let people know that, okay, this upgrade is ready, and you can go online and you can see your account. You can see all of your payments. You can see when they come in, when they go out, etc. And this gentleman called the family court manager, and he said, well, the family court manager has long locks, so he calls him Dread all the time. He said, Dread, I saw this thing, so you telling me that My ex-wife, she could see when I made the payments. So said, yes, she can. So she could see if I'm late. Said, yes, she can. So she don't have to go and wait in a line to find out that she didn't get money. She know right away for late. So he said, yes, that's right. She said, so if I'm late, she could go and get the warrant the next day? I said, yes, she can. So he said, all right, Dread, I'm going to call you back, right? Because I'm going and pay. Right? And he went, he paid, and then he came back, he said, Dread, I made the payment. You seen it there? It registered? And that we found was actually a key point, a key indicator and turning point. Because what we realized as well was that even payers who have to pay, built into their timing our inefficiency. And so therefore, if they knew if I'm supposed to pay on the 1st, she had to go in this line and, and it's going to be a hassle. So I could be late. It's all right. I could be late because it will take her a while to go. And so therefore, there was an inefficiency that they were enjoying. But we took it away. Yeah. And having taken that inefficiency away and having made it transparent, look at the difference. Yeah?
And I guess what is the difference, if you don't mind me asking, in before and after court pay? Have you all seen a specific uptick in terms of payments or?
Most definitely. Interestingly, in a time period in which probably about, I think, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I think it was almost about 40% failure to pay on time, we have gone to less than 1% failure to pay on time.
Well done. Oh, good. Good stuff.
Great. Okay. Patrick, you weren't clapping. No, just joking. He's not happy yet. He's one of the 1%. Dev.
I have a remote question from Hassan Boyo. He has a comment and a question. So his comment is, Eldman's World Trust Index has on its website, quote, but people are encountering roadblocks in their quest for facts, with 73% worried about fake news being used as a weapon. We should work to get Trinidad and Tobago ranked on this index. His question, thoughts on countering fake news?
Anybody want to take that on?
Let me take a stab at that one. It comes down, I think, and this is coming from my days of working in the Freedom of Information Unit in the government. Government on the whole is not well known for putting out information and putting out data in an accurate format to begin with. A classic example is our CSO surveys, which are done, and then you get these survey results, 3, 4 years or 5 years after the fact in terms of having accurate data. So I think government, one way to combat fake news is for government to be heavily working towards having information out in a timely and efficient manner as quickly as possible. And the problem we always face, at least from a Trinidad government perspective, is that government, sometimes you have to force government to put out information. And they always say, if you go to government, ask for information, they always tell you, no, you have to use the Freedom of Information Act to get it, which is wrong. Because if you read the Freedom of Information Act, I'm sure the lawyer here will bear with me on that one, it more or less states that the Freedom of Information Act doesn't stop you or preclude you from putting out information that you would normally put out in the public domain. But because we have a culture in Trinidad and Tobago and in most Westminster type system within the Caribbean of secrecy and keeping the information held within, because of that, you then therefore allow for fake news, rumors, and different things to come out and to populate. And now because of social media, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger and everything, these things can now go out there and be filtered out there. And because of technology, you can also recreate it to make it look like it's official. And that once that gets out there, that permeates. When government comes out now and puts something else out there, then say, oh, government trying to cover up, government trying to hide, government is trying to lie. So I think one way of trying to combat the whole idea of fake news, especially from a public institution point of view, a governance point of view, is for governments on the whole to be more proactive. Any type of information, any type of data that they put out there, because we also have a big issue with in terms of data, and data being relevant, timely, and accurate, so that normal people out there in the private sector can use that data to be able to inform them and guide them in different things that they would like to do.
On that issue of fake news, it's interesting, about 6 years ago, when I did my first session on social media with IEEE Global Humanitarian Technology Conference, and we heard people from the Coast Guard saying how they were getting intelligence on activities, and they were really reliant on accurate information coming from the public through social media, and they were quite thankful of getting this information fed to them. And so it wasn't fake. But it's interesting, about a year ago, I was at a session and I ran into the same guy. He says, we can't take these messages anymore from the public. For example, one person said, posted, because there was an oil spill on one of the beaches in California. He says, deliver your hair, your cut hair, to this beach because human hair absorbs oil. Everybody wants to feel like they're somebody and they're doing something. They got tons of dirty, stinky hair dropped off to the beach.
Wow.
So I think people are well-meaning, but the fake information is pretty annoying. So I think I do understand why some institutions really don't want to engage the general public for stinky hair reasons and other reasons.
True.
Deb, did you have a follow-up online? No? Okay. So you guys, maybe that lunch was too filling. There must be more questions from, oh, yes, sir.
Okay, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Ian Kep. I have a statement first, and then followed by a brief question. The statement is with regards to iGov TT, and I must say it is an excellent initiative since the deployment some 10 years plus ago. My question is, how do you market your technological products and services, we could say ICT, to your users? Is it as a technology or a business solution?
Got you. So, market segment two ways. So we have two sets of customers: ministries, divisions, agencies. We have a consulting unit comprised of 5 individuals who will go and they make touch points with all the ministries, understand what their plan is, what they're working on, and how we can assist. The next part is the citizenry in terms of what is available via TT Connect in terms of taxes, and now they could chat and so on. And we have not been as good as we can be in that area in terms of communicating to the public what is available in any broadcast format. However, we have a plan in place in terms of some large-scale communication to take place within a couple of months. Primarily with regard to e-tax and those things, that the requisite ministry, they normally will advertise because we are really a conduit to make things happen, and the respective ministry will advertise to the public. In terms of, and that is why our role may or may not be known to a lot of the citizens, but there are some things that are specific to us, like the Gov chat, as I mentioned, And in anything that is specific to us, we will be informing the public with regard to the launch I mentioned that is carded for later on in the year. So that part will be out there, and in that broadcast, we'll also facilitate communication of what persons could currently do via the website in terms of, well, the business persons will already know what they could do with TT BizLink, but we'll refresh them for those who may not be aware, and for the citizens with regard to taxes and getting additional information and so on online. So 2 different segments. The first segment is usually well taken care of because we in direct interface with them all the time. We know what they're doing. As I said, we act as an impetus to encourage them to see it to completion. And but the latter one, the second part, persons will be aware through media and so on, but we haven't gone out and targeted any large-scale marketing and advertising in that front because our role is a bit different. Yeah.
Okay. So let me cycle back to the whole concept that we're having here in terms of trust in public institutions. Let me go through each of you. And so the question I want to ask you each is give me an example of what you've seen as a successful implementation that has enhanced public trust. And if there was one that you would wish that could be implemented, and it could, you've in your reading internationally and saying, oh, in New Zealand they've done e-voting successfully, we should do it too. So never mind any cultural issues or lack of money or lack of political will. So, you know, that wish list would be great to, you know, share with the audience. So, okay, so the first one is, what successful tech project have you seen that enhanced public trust in the institution? And the second thing is, you know, a wish or a wannabe.
Okay, good.
Okay, go ahead.
So 1, 2, that's what I'm going with. 1, together with the assistance of our board and so on, we, as I mentioned, because I keep mentioning the chat facility where you could speak with someone live. We haven't even launched it, and we realized the usage on that facility is higher than the walk-in facility because Richard has mentioned TT Connect. We also have service centers where persons could physically go in to conduct business with government. The throughput we have seen online is higher, which is a good because it means we're moving away from brick and mortar as a country and wanting to use the electronic means more. Wish list 2. I wish the payment facility that we have deployed will be rolled out throughout government. That persons could pay online without the hassle for having to move to somewhere and get any business conducted. Because the second part of what we developed, as Marcellin was mentioning, there is a portal facility where you could see all the payments and where it's happening and when you made the payment, and government will be interacting with you and you got your receipt online, the services are expected at this time. Number 2, we have partnered with for an e-procurement system. So we have done this since February last year, and we ensure that all the loose ends have been tied and knotted up and so on, and that took place in December. What I want is for us to move into an environment where all of the procurement that takes place in the country is done electronically. So it opens the market up to multiple, numerous vendors. 2, they're able to see who won and what the cost was and so on. It opens up for transparency because governance is a three-peat. We need openness with transparency. We need an environment for collaboration. And the third is performance. So with systems in place, we're now able not to put our finger in the air and think we're performing, but we're able to press a keyboard, something on our keyboard or on your phone, because you could do it by your phone. And we understand in metric format how we are performing. Right. It will not, the e-procurement will not necessarily directly touch all citizens, but indirectly it does. Because we cannot, as my CEO likes to say, we cannot boil the ocean. We take a part, we boil that part. And then gradually the heat from that part will move, and we keep boiling other parts until we get the whole. And so two things I would like this year, and I put in a time frame to it as well.
Not misspeaking, right?
Huh?
Not misspeaking, right? Like
No, I am. This is my hope. Okay. It's wish list. Wait. This is wish list.
Yeah.
This is not, the one I'm guaranteeing is the first one I spoke of, because we're going to launch that, and all citizens, that applies to all citizens.
Right.
That is a guarantee.
Okay.
The second is wish list. The systems are there, so that is not a wish. They exist, is the uptake. And we are doing our part, as I said, in creating the impetus, in terms of being the distracting factor that is required. We are doing our part. What we want now is the uptake in terms of e-payment, e-procurement. That is my wish list.
Excellent.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. Your turn.
Probably the one that has increased public trust and confidence most is the one that made me gray and got killed. And that is computer-aided transcription. We have seen court cases that have reached the Privy Council and have turned on exactly what was in that court record, which means that the level of trust that both sides have in the accuracy of the record was without doubt. And also that the courts had in the accuracy of that record.
How long ago did that get implemented? Just to put it in context.
1990. Started it in about 1988. Implemented in 1990. Killed dead in 1994. Right. In terms of the wish. Online adjudication and online alternative dispute resolution in small claims matters. We can do it. The hardest part in getting it done is the fact that in Trinidad and Tobago, the country is so disorganized, we do not have addresses. And this means that what it costs us to serve people is absolutely ridiculous and unconscionable. We can have, for example, to serve someone living on Todd's Road. I don't know who knows Todd's Road, but Todd's Road, everybody's address is Todd's Road. And there are whole communities off of Todd's Road. And everybody's address is Todd's Road. The amount of money that we spend serving process in the country, the amount of failed or inaccurate process service is just money going down the drain and lost opportunity. We can, if we can serve people, we can easily do online litigation and online mediation for small claims matters. It's something that we want to do, we have ready. And when you come to the question of public trust and confidence and the importance of this area, I want to make a point. And that is that it is in those small matters where, strangely enough, we see the second most violence, second most highest level of violence in confrontation and trouble within the society. One is in domestic issues, family issues, and the second is in small claims. somebody owes me $10,000, $5,000, and they're not paying me. You and I have a boundary dispute about 2 feet of land. Whose side, as a colleague once said, what side of the bong is the pit latrine? Those are serious, serious issues. They sound small, they sound ridiculous, but they're very real. And they affect our society in very real ways. And the number of matters that come to the criminal side, because we cannot deal with those disputes. And also, we have to bear in mind that nature abhors a vacuum. So when we cannot provide a service to handle these smaller disputes readily, easily, and quickly, you find that other quote-unquote solutions and other agencies that offer solutions start to fill the vacuum. So my wish list, let's get everybody an address and a postal code, and let's move, please, so that we can deal with small claims, and we can deal with service and issues
Great.
of this nature.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think for me, the one technological thing that when was properly implemented had a major impact on the electronic birth papers and electronic marriage certificates and stuff like that. Because before, the length of time it took to get those things, it's now rapidly decreased. I mean, you could now apply for a birth paper, and I think within 2-3 days you can all go get it. And I think that had a major impact, not only on Registrar General, on people, but because other services depended on you getting that for pension, for children registering for school and different things. I think that had a major impact for other sectors of government going down the line in different areas. So I think for me, that was a project that I wasn't involved in personally, but seeing and hearing stories of those who worked in it, it took a long time in coming. They had to jump through a lot of hurdles, go through a lot of quote-unquote, I know what the law is, and what the law allows me not to do to be able to get it done. But I think that shows a good example of what we can do when we put our minds to doing something properly to improve the governance and to improve the service for the population. So I think for me that was a key one. Wish list. For me, one wish list I started on a couple of years back, fell off the radar. I think now me and a couple of colleagues are trying to get back into it, is a way that civil society could work together with government in order to actively monitor the successes of government in achieving certain projects, more so now with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that the world is now moving to in 2030, on which Trinidad and Tobago is a signature to, and a project that we've seen a lot of civil society organizations done in other jurisdictions around the world is working with governments to map out exactly what are the SDGs that those governments are working on to be able to implement and move forward to, and civil society working together with them to be able to actively monitor, to show successes, and also to show failures, and where those failures happen, what can be done to basically improve those failures. A lot of them are using technology as a way to engage that, to engage that interaction. For me, that's a wish list for me, is active involvement in civil society and government, and not only SDGs, but improving the service delivery and the objectives of ministries and departments.
Perfect, thank you. Ms. Mohammed is here, is she not, or did she leave? She's involved with SDGs as well. There's 32 Sustainable Development Goals that, and she's quite active. So, is she still here? Sorry, right there. Okay, so see, ladies and gentlemen, she's deeply involved with SDGs here locally. Dev has a question online.
No.
You just wanted to wave to me, right?
Look up.
Over there.
Oh, over there. Oh, the
Next
other
step.
Dev.
Next step. Yes, good afternoon again. All right. So far we've heard of actually this is a question from me, not in the chat. I'll put it up. But anyhow, we've heard about the past successes, and I realized the success was a spectrum of successes. Some weren't some were a little more successful than the others. My question is this. Looking at the global context of technologies that will improve public trust, and in terms of, I mean, Trinidad is not the only, Trinidad and Tobago are not the only country that will actually have this dilemma of what technologies to implement to improve public trust. Looking at the global space, or like each of the, and we're talking about your wish list, we'd like you to identify maybe one or two technologies that, I know you have had a wish list, but we're looking at the ultimate wish list now. What technology you think that is out there in the global space that we have not yet implemented that could create a great impact in each of the various spheres that we are speaking about?
Biggie.
Sure. Well, I'll give two to make sure that some can continue along. And I would summarize it as interoperability and e-democracy. So we still have in Trinidad and Tobago and most parts of the world a siloed effect where my data is mine and don't ask me for anything. And it contributes to this because we're supposed to have a single source of truth. So if I want to know a person's address, I need to know I could go to this place and they have it. And if I want to know someone's date of birth, this place has it. And then when we put a platform on top of that, so Estonia did X roads, when we put a platform on top of that to pull everything together, then we know I want to see Charles Bob Semple, I want to know everything about Charles Bob Semple. And it pulls from all the ministries, all of my demographics, and we have it there. That is one. That is a major. But as I said, you said far away, right? So that is like, good, nice. Right, so you see the legislation talk starts again, right?
Actually, that's one of the reasons for DP was because government wanted to move towards that, and we realized that we needed data protection legislation. So it was there because of that.
Correct. And well, the next one I mentioned, e-democracy, where for like in Miami, I think there's 311. So it is a platform where if you see a pothole, you report it, and someone will respond. And there are analytics in terms of how long, in terms of KPIs, how long it took, and the performance of that ministry together with government as a wider whole is monitored based on that. So I would say interoperability with single source of truth, with legislation, I guess that means time's up, and e-democracy. So those are my two. Yes, sure.
Right?
Just a minute ago, you guys were all talking at the same time. It reminds me of being my wife's family. They're all doing that. Did you guys want to address the same question from your perspective?
Well, for me, one thing I'm fascinated with, I'm learning more about it now, because I'm not an expert on it. I'm sure there are more experts in the room here over than me, is blockchain. And the fascination of what blockchain allows, that could happen. We see now with blockchain allows for the contracts, the way the contracts are done on the blockchain, that triggers certain things happen when other things happen.
Yep.
And the way they're structured. And I think looking at how blockchain operates, obviously there are privacy considerations that must be taken into, and there's a big debate right now going on in the sphere with regards to blockchain privacy and how it can help, but also some of the problems with it that could affect privacy. And you have AI, you have machine learning, all these different things. But for me, I think blockchain represents they call it now the internet of the future. That's here now. And the avenues that blockchain could allow for us and could be used to do different things, like what he's talking about there, to be able to improve governance system and to be able to improve trust. Because remember, trust is a two-way street. But trust takes a long time to build up. Yeah. But it could be destroyed quick, like that, you know. So I think that to me is one interesting thing that's happening in the world right now. I think we could probably look at and see how we can use that, integrate that into what we're doing right now here in the Caribbean as a whole.
Let me jump in on that blockchain. You got my interest. Two projects I visited when I was in Bangkok about 2 months ago. One, a group that set up a system with the power utility of sharing power. So they were using blockchain for distribution of power in the Bangkok area. very effectively and very cost effective. The second one was a group of entrepreneurs that are looking at providing banking to the unbanked, which 2/3 of the population of South Asia are not, they're economic migrants, like they're from Myanmar and different places of the world where they don't have bank accounts and stuff. So there is a real opportunity. So those are two really classic examples of using blockchain and very successful, not theoretical. These were on the ground projects.
And I actually have two colleagues of mine, one based in I think it's England, who's actually working on the whole idea of smart contracts in the blockchain as part of procurement.
Yeah.
So in terms of deliverables, so you have certain deliverables to make, and then once those deliverables have been made and verified and checked, then it releases the funds for the other person. Another friend of mine in Slovenia is now working on, with a group of colleagues, and looking at using blockchain again, for what I mentioned before, and monitoring SDGs and implementation of SDGs in certain countries in Europe right now.
Okay, he's going to give me the single, he's going to give me, okay, gentleman over there, that's the last question from the floor, and then we'll wrap up.
I wanted to actually walk back a little bit onto the issue with the addresses and whatnot, right? I too actually have kind of stumbled over that, obviously not in the same capacity, but it's often difficult to kind of figure out, okay, I want to break Trinidad and Tobago up into regions or whatnot, for whatever purposes. What are the names of the region? Should we use the political names, the names before, and what are the official names? And often online, if it forms, they ask for zip codes and whatnot. That may be a required field. I'm told Trinidad and Tobago has zip codes, but, I think it's part of something TT Post is working on or whatever, but that's not well known, at least not yet. One of the ways to tackle that, because I think in Trinidad and Tobago, we tend to want to make everything central and put it in the control of the government. One of the ways to tackle those things is, basically a format they may use in like IEEE and all these other technical institutions where people form working groups to come up with a solution. I do not see much activity like that in Trinidad and Tobago outside of basically, the university and the government, and it's usually like the government funding some project in the university or whatnot. And also, since we're talking about trust, one of the things I want to mention that kind of erodes public trust that you may not be aware of coming to like iGov and whatnot is I think sometimes state institutions do a little bit too much in the sense that you mentioned like procurement systems and whatnot. I think TSTT produced a procurement system at some point in time. TSTT has a whole consulting arm for IT and whatnot, but at the end of the day, they're 51% owned by the government. That's competition with, the smaller and even the bigger independent developers and vendors out here. Because I think there are also other institutions, non-state institutions, that have procurement systems as well on the market. And what we continue to have in Trinidad and Tobago oftentimes is there was a good idea to solve a problem, probably at state level or whatnot, was a problem solved in the private sector. And then somehow the government ends up kind of competing with people in the private sector and whatnot. And that really does not help the whole go forward. That just kind of brings us back into crabs in a barrel, Yeah, thank you.
And that is a very valid point. And just to address that, we did look, so we didn't create anything for procurement, right? We actually partnered with TSTT with the same procurement that you're speaking of because of the very same reasons that you're saying, because we would end up doing multiple things and going nowhere. So point well taken, and that is what we strive to do.
But even in that case,
yeah.
As I'm saying, TSTT is, again, with all the bacchanal going on with TSTT right now, TSTT is still a state institution. So even in that partnership, TSTT does, will provide consulting services to, private sector companies if they come to TSTT. So it's still a case of the government competing with local and whatnot. And, we have to fix that, because that really, I've seen people basically subscribe to certain state-funded programs supposed to help development and whatnot, and then a few months or maybe a year down the line, they realize that same organization is more or less offering to the general public the same things that they went there to get help with to develop better. You know, that...
Okay, I get
Yeah.
you. I get you. I follow. All right, good.
Okay, thank you for that comment. That adds to the dimension. It's not a simple issue, and you're going to have dissenting views. There's going to be people, especially the party loyals, are going to say everything the government is doing is fantastic, right? But you know, to temper it, you know, there's been projects that have been highly successful, and you know, I guess, do you guys are you, and this is the final comment, are you sort of optimistic, all of you, in terms of how the country is moving towards developing a culture of trust, that you feel confident that we're moving into to the next generation, that you're leaving a good legacy?
Yes, I am, because throughout my entire development time, private, public, quasi, whichever one, I understand that the bad sometimes come with the good, in terms of there are some things will be successes and some not. So I sometimes, when I see some of the things that could be done better, that happen, I leave my optimism open.
Okay.
It is not shut, so right now it's open. I'm seeing certain avenues progressing well, and there are certain avenues that not progressing as well as they should. And as much as, in terms of IGOV-TT and our role, as much as we could help and assist, that is what we'll do to increase the optimism for all of us.
Perfect. Thank you. Master.
I'm mixed.
Okay.
There are some areas where I see where I'm optimistic and I see positive developments taking place. I still think, unfortunately, that we stifle innovation. And just to give you a very simple example of something, I remember doing something that was created by us, Trinidad and Tobago. And everyone kept asking, where did you get this model? And we said, well, no, it came out of our heads. It's our model. The thing is, well, yes, but what is it? Is it an Australian model, really? Or was it an English model? And we kept saying, no, it came out of our heads. And eventually I got so fed up, and in order to get it recognized in the way in which I needed it recognized, I said, you know what? Australia and England helped us. And after that, it was like, woo. So the point of the matter is there's an element of lack of faith in ourselves.
That's true.
That must be conquered if you are to really get my positive optimism.
Perfect. Thank you. Risha, final comment.
I think trust is a two-way street. I think as much as we want government to earn our trust, we must also earn our trust in ourselves. We are very untrustworthy. The only stat I've ever seen with regards to trust in Trinidad and Tobago was done way back when we had a survey done on Maury, a world value survey. I think I said Trinidad and Tobago had a trust level of 3%, if I remember correctly. So we're not really much of a trust in people. So I think we have to be, and I'm optimistic because you're seeing what's going on right now. A lot of people are now asking more questions of government. A lot of people are more trying to get more involved in what government is doing. A lot of people are being innovative and not waiting on government to help them, but using the avenues that are existing to be able to create new avenues for themselves. So I'm optimistic that in the end of the day, we will eventually, we probably will never get 100% perfect trust in public institutions, but at least there will be a collaboration between government and society and civil society organizations and citizens to be able to improve on the world.
Good.
Wow. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was a great informative session. You guys all gave fantastic insight in your life experiences, which is just as important as talking in an abstract world. So again, thank you for attending and thank you for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much to the panel, and thank you to the audience. I'd like to invite you guys to go through that door to grab some liquid refreshment, and we return for the open forum immediately after. So please don't have it there. Bring it straight back here so we can have the open forum. Remember, for the open forum, for those who are not, was too shy to speak out loud, you could write your questions on a piece of paper, hand it to me, or you can go on Twitter, hashtag TTIGF 2019, and ask the questions there. All right? Can we come back in 5 minutes? Keep on time? Thanks. Yeah.
For the photographs.
Yeah, so I'm Tracy Hackshaw, Director of TTMAG. To my right, I have Ajmal Nazir, who is the chair-elect of the TTMAG. To his right, we have Professor Patrick Hussain, who actually is the founder of the TTMAG and the head of TTNIC, the .tt domain registry in Trinidad and Tobago, the CCTLD, which is country code top-level domain for those who have acronyms issues. And to his right, as you would have met earlier if you're following the proceedings, is Devananti Luxing, who is the current chair of the Trinidad and Tobago Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Group, TTMAG. The way we're going to do it now, as we discussed previously, is questions will be coming in from you, from remote and online via Twitter, hashtag TTIGF 2019. And the way we're going to approach this is that we're not going to be answering questions. We're just here to facilitate the discussion and to have the audience ask and answer questions. So let's see how that works. So we're going to try it that way. All right, are we game? So we want to facilitate a discussion it's a forum between ourselves. And we're hoping that if a question comes in from you, maybe someone else in the audience can pick up the question and answer it. To that end, I would also want to call up for my colleagues from ICANN, LACNIC, Inter-Society, CTU, Naralo, and so on to bring in your perspectives as the questions come in. And we're going to start with, I have a question already written in on paper. First question: does the GDPR affect non-profit organizations, and how so? How does a non-profit organization prepare for GDPR? Anybody on the stage would like to maybe just start the discussion, kick it off with any comments?
I'd say, without knowing the exact mechanics of what is required for the GDPR, a non-profit organization should not be exempt from any of the rules that a normal private company would have to adhere to. So I would say it should be the same as the private companies, what they have to go through. But I don't know if anyone in the audience, Bartlett, if you can share some more information on that.
So generally speaking, with the GDPR, what made it, I think, interesting for a lot of observers, even outside of the European Union, was the fact that it sought to create a level playing field in as many regards as possible, regardless of which country you're doing business in, that kind of a thing. Another aspect was, well, regardless of who you say you are, so long as your activities constitute engaging with Europeans meaningfully and their personal information, then in a broad sense, you are within the remit of it. So if the question in a real nuts and bolts sense is, well, how does a not-for-profit comply? We don't really have no money, that kind of a thing. Well, that to me is really a practical consideration that you're going to have to take on board in terms of considering your own longevity and so on. And the degree to which processing personal data is a significant part of what you do as a not-for-profit. It may, so because to the extent that it's a significant part of it, then in terms of your risk profile, you're going to have to pay more attention to it and perhaps consider getting more resources into putting systems in place to manage the data effectively.
So we had a lawyer weigh in, which is, I guess, appropriate. Does anybody have any other thoughts on this? Anybody who wants to weigh in with their own thinking? I recognize Albert Daniel. Yes?
Albert Daniels, I can. Not a specific response to that question, but a general comment on the issue of the GDPR from a global perspective. I think the Trinidad and Tobago multi-stakeholder community, needs to also, like other communities in the Caribbean, come to the realization that what happens in the global community could, and in most times does actually affect things in the local environment. And this whole issue, going back to the comment that I made earlier today with the GDPR, is having and will continue to have a significant impact on what we do in each of our Caribbean countries, because I know, this IGF is being streamed. So the point is that we need to ensure that we follow the happenings, pay attention to situations where there is an opportunity for us, including the young people, to participate in policy development, in input to the type of internet that you would be using, because when we do not make inputs into these global processes, which at first may not seem to have an impact on us, in the end, we end up being the ones on which the greatest impact of some of these global situations can have negative or positive consequences. And again, to say with GDPR, it was a situation where the European Union in April 2016 put this legislation into effect, and it was finalized in May 2018, and many international organizations had no choice but to ensure that they were compliant. Mm-hmm. It is gradually filtering down to some of us in Caribbean territories, and the point is we should always be vigilant from a Caribbean perspective on what's happening in the global environment.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point, Albert. When I was in Brussels just after the GDPR came into effect, I happened to go onto the Trinidad Express news site, just to see the news. I'm in Brussels, that's what's going on. And I got this strange message saying that they cannot view this website because of GDPR. Well, I was at an EU event, which was quite useful. So I actually showed it to the GDPR people in the EU, and they had quite a comical reaction to the response from a Trinidad organization saying they clearly didn't understand what GDPR meant. And when I did do some work and what's going on, apparently the feeling is that since the Express served European audiences through subscribers and so on, they didn't know how to deal with it. So the simple solution was to block it. So if I'm in the EU, I can't see the content because they don't know how to do it. And I went back to the EU after that and it was available. But that was an interesting response, and I think it's useful for us to understand that it affects everyone, but you also have to understand how it affects us. I think that's the important thing. And I don't know if there's anybody who has any experiences like that, but it really is something that, for me as a Caribbean person, seeing a reaction like that from a local company, a large company, in the case of something in the EU watching and saying, well, you clearly don't understand, meaning you in the Caribbean don't understand how to interpret what it means is a lesson to us, I think, about trying to take the time to understand and to react accordingly. If anybody has any responses to that, anybody may want to weigh in on things like that? No?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I was just about to say that, I think at least with the GDPR, at least it forces you to think about how you are going to handle, Europeans' data and how they're going to treat with non-Europeans' data. And then what you might decide to do is just harmonize your approach to all the data because, for all intents and purposes, and I'm no lawyer to understand the nitty-gritty, the GDPR seems to make a very good effort in allowing for Europeans to understand how their data is being used, stored, and if they want access to it, to see how their information is being handled seems very sensible. Actually, and I think we have an example here within the MAG and in discussions of .tt. And that was, one of my concerns were, coming into the MAG from a Trinidad and Tobago Computer Society was, and what ICANN is dealing with now with the public who is and so on, was how registrant information for .tt, anybody could query it, and you could find out who the person's registrant's name, address, and phone number. And perhaps Patrick, you can come next on that, because as part of the discussions on GDPR, those concerns raised within the MAG, and your development has happened regarding .tt.
Yeah, so actually, this is exactly what I was going to talk about.
Yeah.
So because of GDPR, we have started redacting contact information. So prior to GDPR, you do a search on a domain name, and you get information for the billing contact, the administrative contact, technical contact. We've started redacting that information. Now we could, it's easy for us to check and see who owns the domain and then redact based on location, but we decided to just make it just global, and so it applies to all entries, all registrants. And this, again, this is because of what's going on with GDPR. We didn't want to get into trouble. We can't afford the 10 million or whatever.
All right, so before we move on off the topic, is there any further comments on GDPR, CDPR? Yes, I recognize my colleague from the CTU.
Yes, Nigel Casimir, CTU. And my comment is something I'm not clear on, which is the jurisdiction boundary for this enforcement. So you are a registry in Trinidad and Tobago, and some European citizens might have registered stuff with you and given you information. And you decide, I am outside of this jurisdiction. What is the consequence to you? What would happen if you were to continue providing all the information that you used to? Right? I don't understand, and I might be quite wrong, that a DPA in whatever country in Europe could take any sanction against me here as a registry in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm wondering if that is outside of their jurisdiction, and that's the part that I'm not quite clear on. I don't know if anyone is more informed than I am on this.
I see Mr. Bartlett is chomping at the bit.
I wouldn't take it from the perspective of more informed, but what I would suggest is that, based on my reading of things so far, we may have been moved by fear a bit more than we perhaps needed to be, for those of us outside of the European Union, in responding to the GDPR and its perceived impact. Now, the reality is, because there isn't like a clear-cut case so far coming out of the GDPR jurisprudence where they've said, well, for a fact, when it comes to extraterritoriality, because that's the fancy word, this is what it means, and these are the terms we're really going to use to apply it and what have you. Nobody knows exactly for sure, but we can make reasonable inferences, And so, for example, the thing I like about European-style legislation is they never just give you the legislation, they always give you significant context clues for you to make sense of it. Now, in the preamble, or whatever you want to call it, to the GDPR, they point out, in respect of the whole notion of extraterritoriality, more or less a test, as it were, to determine whether or not the extraterritorial scope provisions would apply to you operating outside of the European Union. Now, I don't have it up in front of me, and so I can't repeat it word for word. But the general idea underneath the whole thing is, can it be objectively said that based on your business and your business model, that you were targeting Europeans? That's the essential idea, so in other words, if a European happens to wander across my premises and shows up and say, hey, whatever service you're offering, I want it, that in and of itself doesn't mean that the GDPR and its scope would apply to you and your operations. But if for a fact somebody looks at your business and they realize, well, first of all, depending on where you are in the world, and you try to access your website, if I'm in, I don't know, Brussels or somewhere, it results to whatever their top level domain is, and it's in their language, it's in Flemish or what have you, and that kind of thing, and we provide the best XYZ service to people in these places. Obviously, those are indicators that, well, you're targeting Europeans, But if it is that you're just running a business and Europeans happen to engage your business, let's use the typical Caribbean example. You're running a hotel and some Europeans happen to show up at your hotel. That act in and of itself wouldn't bring them within your scope. And so let's bring it more to focus to the whole notion of the who is information and so on. I think that is a genuinely tricky situation. Genuinely, if your CCTLDs or what have you. Because the truth is, it's really hard to gauge focus, because in my view, in my personal view, the very nature of these TLDs is that you generally, whoever wants to buy it, you'll generally allow it. There are exceptions, for example, Canada say, well, you have to be a Canadian and that kind of thing. But in the main, most persons with TLDs, whether they're CCTLDs or otherwise, you want whoever is willing to pay for it to take it. And so that raises a genuine question that in the meaning of whoever is Europeans, and in a sense, you're kind of targeting them in that broad sense, So that one is genuinely tricky. But in the main, I would say we should not be so quickly moved by fear. Just do a genuine assessment of your situation. Am I targeting them or not? Do I honestly believe that I'm targeting them? Yes, comply. But here is to my point is the bigger point, which they've touched on. If you have a business and there's lots of data as part of your business model, you're processing lots of data, just employ good practices, period. Forget about personal information. If you're processing lots of data, period, as part of your business model, employ fundamental, just good practices. Because the reality is, even if you say, all right, to use the example of the newspaper, say, well, forget them Europeans, block them out. What happens when California's legislation comes in stream? You're going to block out the Californians too? Brazil just came on stream. Are you going to block out eventually, you're going to block out everybody. So it seems to me the best approach is like what you touched on. Yeah. Just implement good best practices, period, and leave it there.
Hi, good day, Kevin Swift.
Hi.
Just to add another comment to that. Again, not at all versed on the topic, but from what I had been reading, I think one of the ideas is that European DPAs are looking at setting up one of the biggest cases of orchestration, meaning that where they are unable to directly enforce, I think the idea is for them to create an effect of a compliance club of sorts. Mm-hmm. So what they'll be doing is that where they can, so it may not be directly from a DPA in case you're infringement of not complying with GDPR, but where there's another entity, whether through existing arrangements, trade or the like, that has a link back to the European DPA, they will try to enforce through other agencies and means. It's an experimental approach, but and again, it's still ambiguous. But the idea that I had come across is this massive and extensive network of orchestration through other actors that they're going to try, and therefore give this sense of a compliance club. So as Bartlett is rightly saying, the idea would be best you apply what is best and needed in terms of data processing and management. It's, I guess, a trust issue, human factor issue that they're working with.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if Albert could answer this, but from what I understand, GTLEs decided to redact contact information as well, right?
Some.
So this is one where I have to be very careful what I say. So I can describe where things are at right now in ICANN. On the 25th of March 2018, the way data was made available in the WHOIS was changed as a result of the requirements to be compliant with
Just to clarify, what is the WHOIS?
The WHOIS is the database that has all of the details of the names, addresses, telephone numbers, and other personal information of individuals who have paid for top-level domains, whatever those domains may be, the regular ones, the legacy ones, .coms, .orgs, .edus, and all of the new ones, .perfumes, .cars, and so on. So it used to be an easy place to go if you want to find out whether Tracy was the owner, for example, of .carnival or something like that, if you wanted to reach out to contacts. Now, because of the GDPR requirements, 25th of May, the access to that data changed. Now, there are different parts of the global multi-stakeholder community which have different requirements, different requests, different needs for data. So what has been happening is this ePDP, an expedited policy development process, has put in place essentially to fast track what the ICANN global community's position should be with regard to DNS data that's kept in the WHOIS. One of the reasons this morning that I said, it would be good for everyone here to take a look at the final report coming from the working group that has been working on this EPDP is that it would give a good idea of how you, as a multi-stakeholder community, can address the idea of what you do in your local environment, because you would see what the international community has done in their environment. So from an ICANN perspective, the answer is the access to the data has been changed. Whether it will remain as it is right now, or whether there will be any further changes, you would be able to look at that final report and see what the final decision is.
And I believe there are a couple of comments coming in remotely. Dev?
Yes, there are two comments. One was actually a question that came in just as the last panel was wrapping up. So shall I ask that question?
Sure.
Okay. So it was a question directed to the last panel. And the question is from 50 Lindsay. And for the panel, in Trinidad, healthcare can be a nightmare. Would you agree that using technology to better communicate patient care among hospitals, nursing homes, and pharmacies can help solve this? And a second question was, what challenges other than interoperability and security and privacy need to be addressed in this case?
That's a tough question. Anybody on stage would like to take a stab at perhaps starting the discussion on that? No.
We got a hand out there?
Yeah, this guy.
Oh, there's someone from the audience. Excellent.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I believe that technology initiative is already in Mount Hope, where you have on each ward, or the end of each ward, you have patient history, you have the pharmacology for the patient, the new pharmacology inputs, the condition, the referenced opinion or diagnosis from another doctor. What I've noticed is it's just in Mount Hope, it's not necessarily in San Fernando General, it's not
All
in
hospitals.
any other hospitals here and there. Regards to, what was the other question, if it is
Regarding healthcare,
Yeah.
what challenges other than interoperability, security, and privacy need to be addressed in this case?
That security and privacy, that would have to be a coded, for each patient, there has to be a coded, a code pin for each patient that changes. I mean, if you have in a year, you have 1,000 patients, you probably have to redo. But on reference, if you have to go back and reference for a particular patient, if a patient has a condition and it's temporarily stymied or non-symptomatic, and in about 4 or 5 years, it begins to have problems again. You have to go back and check the records. So you'll probably have to have a larger recording system, computer recording system. So the problem, the initiative is there in Mount Hope, but it's not in Port of Spain, it's not in San Fernando, and it's not in San Grande or any other major hospital in.
I was
Well, maybe. Thanks, Rochelle. Maybe I could take a stab at one aspect of it. So, interoperability kind of has a couple of dimensions, but I will touch on data classification.
Right.
So, one of the things that we suffer from in the region, I believe, certainly in Trinidad and Tobago, is the lack of data classification policies and standard data classification. So, something as simple as the date format is problematic for us. So somebody talked about postcodes and so on. Let's go even further back, just dates. We can't get, is it month, day, month, year, month, day? Is it four integers for the year, or is it two characters for the month, and so on? So when you're trying to do interoperability issues, and getting to that level
Wow.
and classifying data, talking about what is secure, what is secret, what is open, because there's a lack of policy across the board and standardization, getting to the interoperability level is always a problem. So I think we have to go like one step, even one layer below that for not just health records, but for, I mean, everything. People records, got people records, land records, everything in that regard.
Oh. I'm just surprised that, that I never thought of it that way, that, so you're saying that within different government departments and so on, there are differing ways of storing the dates and so on?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that would have been standardized across all government to say, okay, you're going to use the ISO date format.
Because just as, and I know Jacqueline has a question, but just because, so if the Ministry of Health has a format, there's no guarantee that the Ministry of National Security carries the same format, or the EBC carries the same, there's no guarantee. And one of the things that we found when we were trying to do that across the board is that you have to do a massive cleansing of data just to get a standardized format for data, just to do anything. So that the project of getting to a standardized database for people or population data, for business data, and for land and property data is a project that has to, but it's ongoing. And those are the kind of things that are missing. And data classification being one of the outstanding policies in government. And even in some private sector organizations, when you talk to them and you ask them, do you have a data classification policy? Is it written? They actually say no. So in some, I mean, you have an idea that this data is confidential and this data might be secret because it's a layer below. But there are gray areas in between and beyond. So that's some of the areas we do have to look at, I think, as well. I believe Jacqueline had a...
Yeah, let me just say something about the health question. About a couple of years ago, I was involved in a committee that was looking at precisely doing this so that somebody who goes to a hospital in Port of Spain and then they go down to San Fernando, they don't have to redo everything. Right now, the information isn't shared. And so the project was really looking at having some kind of centralized database with where data collected from different hospitals would go there and you would have access to it. The issue was that different health centers and hospitals were using different systems, different vendors. And so to do something like that is extremely difficult. You need to change each of them, essentially.
And they don't operate from a standard source. So
Right.
Yeah.
But of course, standards are available, especially for health. There's something called the HIPAA standard. So as long as you make everything HIPAA compliant, but then there are some strict rules and regulations you have to enforce for that.
Yeah.
So it is possible.
I remember there was a company coming in Trinidad called Medulin who was looking at trying to do something across the board. Because they do medical records,
right.
And they're trying to establish something out in Trinidad and Tobago. And Jacqueline had a response.
Yeah, the question asked what were the issues apart from data interoperability and privacy and security and so forth, Russell. All right. So even though we talked about all the ones that they didn't ask about, I wanted to put forward one that they haven't mentioned, and that would be the buy-in from individuals to allow our data to be used. Because one of the things that happens, especially with medical information that leads to stigma, for example, abortions, HIV, there's a lot of information there that's not just straight up medical, I broke my foot and I went to and I got a cast on my foot or whatever. But because those things do not, if they come out, they don't impact your life quite as much as some of the seriously how would I put it? Yeah, the ones that stigmatize you, the ones for which you can still lose your jobs, you can lose your housing, you can lose basically all the stuff that's important in your life if this information comes out. I mean, people are sad about you if they find out that you've got cancer. But if they find out you got HIV, they put you out of your house, you lose your job, you have no money, you get put on the street. Sometimes people will assume the reasons that you got it, and they may decide to come and perpetrate hate crimes against you. So there's a lot of serious issues about health data that's not just, okay, what are the technical issues about getting all this health data together? It's huge about who gets access to it, how much access they get to it, and what kind of person they are. Because you can have all the technology you want, but that's not going to prevent me from reading this information and going down the street, going into the rum shop and telling everybody, hey, Dev have HIV, you know, right? There's no technology that can prevent you from doing that. There's no technology that's going to say you can't, it's going to zip your mouth. And that's something that is really, really important with regard to who we are and what our ethics are about confidentiality of patient data in the Caribbean. And that's something that I personally have very little trust about, because I've been seeing things like, you know, you get people in insurance companies. You go to talk to your insurance agent and there's somebody else's file right there open on their desk. And they go off and you can read the file if you want. Technology doesn't prevent people from not having an idea or having that confidentiality built into themselves and their morals and their ethics. And that, I think, would be a huge, huge issue that would prevent full-scale adoption of something like that.
Well, even on the flip side to that, Jacqueline, on the flip, I mean, sort of a flip, things like drug use or drug abuse, alcoholism, is their response. So it could be a health issue, addiction, but is their responsibility on the other side of life now for that to be disclosed to employers, potential spouses, whatever the issue is. And I guess that's like the other dimension of it. So it's complex and exactly. Yeah.
To be disclosed by law. If it's required to be disclosed by law,
Yeah.
But there are many things that I don't have to tell my lawyer if my employer I have HIV. That is definitely not something that's required. So if they find out, that might be a serious issue. Although specific things.
Although if you fill out an insurance application form these days, they actually ask you for that now.
Yeah, and they're supposed to keep it confidential, which is why I'm, as I said, concerned when I go into an insurance agent and I sit at her desk and she goes off to get something, and this is something that actually happened, and 5 files were there, and she was gone for like 15 minutes photocopying something, and I could have gone through and read all of these people's confidential information. And that's something that we need to build in our culture, in ourselves, that when you cannot be careless with data, because there are serious, serious implications sometimes.
Correct. Okay, I see the use table feverishly consulting and scribbling and write and so on. So my assumption is that we're getting a swath of questions from that table. So go for it. Let's hear from you. And let's hear from Holy Faith for a change. Yes, the mic is being placed, so step one. And you guys told me you're going to ask a question, right? I asked you, you said you were going to ask a question for sure. So I'm waiting, here it comes. Here comes the question. No questions. Well, while we wait for them, anybody else has a question on this side of the room? Yeah, so Kevin, and you want to sit up there? Coming back to you, so.
Hi, thanks again. Kevin Swift, Lacknick. This is a comment, and also in the comment, a question. So, Lacknick, had been collaborating with a couple of entities over the last couple of years to try and do this sort of high-level state of internet governance initiatives. And one of the things that we have found is that the Global Information Society Watch, they produced a report at the end of 2017 on NRIs, and they had mentioned that there were certain preconditions in particular communities, societies, that made for internet governance or NRIs or internet governance initiatives to be robust and have long-term impact on their society. And I think today one of the recurrent themes we've been hearing is that there are definitely some cultural considerations that we need in order to really make the type of changes we want to see in the digital front. These preconditions that were identified were a sense of agency, heightened sense of agency at that, a heightened sense of social compact, and also societies where there was a high exercise of democratic rights. So basically the report is saying that once these three preconditions were there, that there seem to have been greater impacts from national IGS and the like. Where are we in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of these things? Because I think one of the things that is certain is that thematically we have a lot of information to discuss, but there's still a lot of systematic changes that need to occur. And it could very well be that the digital space or a forum like this could be the place where we start working on those systematic issues. So the question part of it is to get a feel of the room as to where we are in terms of those things, those preconditions, and what can we do from this space to influence systematically how the environment we need to encourage digital transformation. Right, the three preconditions, agency. So agency in particular for the young people or those who may not know, it's that sense of responsibility. And earlier on, I know a lot of the discussions this year and in years before has always been, the government don't do this, we have to wait on the government. And there's this sort of antagonistic relationship between the government and the citizenry, which really in a digital environment doesn't need to be the case. I think everyone has a role to play and everyone is quite relevant in creating good digital governance. So agency is one, social compact, meaning the way how sectors work together, that tripartite arrangement, and of course exercising democracy outside of just voting once, actually being part and fulfilling your civic duty and being engaged in the governance and democracy of your country. So those are the preconditions. They said that countries, societies with those preconditions, they found that their initiatives did bolster something on the digital landscape. Where are we in terms of that, and what can we do to affect these things?
Wow, that's what you call a big question. Before we answer that question, though, give it some thought. I have an idea. Getting back to this youth table, I'm going to ask you a question. How about that?
Oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, hold your question because you had your chance. I'm going to ask you a question now. This is not a hard question, but it's something I want to hear a response from, especially the Holy Faith, but anybody can answer. So I've been seeing a lot of people posting things about, a lot of parents posting pictures of their kids, babies, growing up, Instagram, Facebook, etc. What do you think as a young person, if, this is hypothetical, I'm not sure if it ever happened to you, you were to grow to a point where you're now using Instagram, Facebook, and you look for yourself, and you see yourself from baby to toddler to whatever, and you're now seeing this image for the first time and saying, well, what is, mom or dad, what have you, I am now exposed on the internet. But do you have any response to that? So give that some thought, and let's get back to the hard, big question. Or if you want to answer one time. Anybody has any thoughts on that question? I think that's an easy question for you all to answer. It's not too hard. Holy faith, yes. Yes, I see the mic is being handed to someone. It's moving. It's happening. Somebody's going to answer. Somebody's going to, yes. It's happening. All right. Oh. But somebody else, so that's good. Thank you. No, go ahead. You go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. All right.
You start the ball rolling.
No problem. Well, I think as children, we are our parents' property for a little bit. All right. At least until we're 18. Well, not in the Caribbean, maybe till like 30 or something. But yeah, I understand what you're saying because my dad, he always posts stuff for me on Facebook and like we'd be out eating and take a picture of me and be like, stop doing that. Because I don't want my auntie from New York to know that I eaten or everything. So I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, to them, they want to capture these moments and stuff. So I kind of understand that is what he's trying to do. So I don't really have a specific answer, but my opinion on it is that you have to bear with them for a little bit. Some of them now discovering the internet. But as for the new parents, that are already well adapted to social media, and you see a lot of them posting hundreds of pictures of their newborns and all of that on Instagram and stuff. I guess I'd have advice is to keep your children private and share the special moments because like you said, you don't want them to turn 18 and see every single moment of their lives posted on social media. So yeah, that's just some things for new parents to consider. So thanks.
Thank you.
Cool. Well.
So no, don't move the mic yet. First, they have a question first. But if you want to answer that question as well, feel free. So let's hear from them. Yeah, are you going to answer Kevin's question? I'll be impressed. All right. Come on. Yeah! Woo! Yeah!
Hi. Okay, so in the second panel, two of the speakers had something to say about youths and giving out passwords and not being aware of data security. We tend to sort of disagree with that statement.
Okay.
And someone said something about us being having short attention span. Right, we disagree with that because we want to know what prompted that generalized statement because they say that the younger generation, in my opinion, it's kind of, you can't group this generation because we are around 17, 18, 19 right here, and then they are younger than us, and then they are 25 and 26, and all those are youths, right? And I would think that the people who are in the later 20s, they had the era when Facebook was more prominent, and they used to post way more than us. But now in our generation, we have more private social medias like Snapchat and Instagram where you could block your profile, and we don't post every moment of our lives and I here now eating and everybody could see, right? So I think that we, especially because we are the technical age, we would be more aware of the data security, how to, those things that you're sharing and you're seeing links and stuff and you know not to click it and we know what is spam and we know what is not safe. So I disagree with that statement when they say that youth's not aware. I think that we would be more aware than adults who not familiar with the technology. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there any, before they leave the table, that mic, make sure that mic get some value. Anybody has anything else to go? Yeah, all right. You answering Kevin's question? Social compact and agency and thing?
Oh, no.
Okay.
We have a question.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon.
So we just wanted to know, how do we encourage a culture of security and raise trust in our own ideas and products?
Wow. Another two big questions. We have to balance which. Maybe I'll ask the professor, how the professor in the panel?
On what? Trust?
Do you have the Kevin or you have, what's your name? Rianne's question.
Yeah, no, this. Oh, yeah, you have a question?
Sorry. Just to add on to what she said. There was an article in the papers yesterday, I think. It was about a man named O'Shane George who went to the Carnegie licensing office with a passport picture and $1,500, gave it to a man outside the office. Then 3 days later, he met the same man at the Carnegie roundabout and collected a license. That is like the same issue of security and trust that we're talking about. So, but that's also a culture problem. Everybody know that in Trinidad, especially with the San Fernando licensing office, you could go there and get it done immediately. 1,500, 3,000. It depends on how it is, time of the year and things like that. But that is part of the Trinidadian culture. Everybody know that the man stand up outside. You don't really talk to him because he's one of the scammers, or maybe he trying to offer you a little help and thing in exchange for money. But that's part of the culture. So how we are adding that and accounting for that in our new security, especially if we want to do online stuff. Is the man who collected 1,500, can he now collect that via Republic Bank and nobody ever notice, and the license go through the mail instead? If it digitized, like where is the oversight in that when you're connecting it all together?
Well, you're without saying too much, you're actually hitting a lot of the issues that the last panel was dealing with in terms of, without them saying it, what I would call the discretionary power of government officials to do certain things is prevent. Somebody talk about blockers, right? So who would block you going online and why? Because.
Mike.
Oh, so they're basically doing an e corruption then.
Increasing the rate.
Go ahead. I like the flow. You want to say something?
Sure. Good afternoon once again. I know you're all probably tired of hearing my voice.
No.
So, being in Upper Six now, we're being exposed to Caribbean studies. And it's really a unique subject. We get to touch on history, we get to touch on economy, we get to touch on geography. And a big part of that, to me, is development. I think being a young person, having access to the internet, to know what a first world country is, to see, what we can aspire towards. And, now because CAPE is around the corner, as part of your curriculum, we have to know about development, looking at Millennium Goals, SDGs, yeah. I can't help but feel, being a CAPE student, that our curriculum still maintains an emphasis on the regurgitation of facts. To draw a parallel, I look at the SAT exam, which, given the restructuring of GATE, for instance, we have an upturn in the number of people taking the SAT exams. And it's really a test of aptitude, even though it's a standardized test. I think now, as we grow older, my generation particularly, as fields become more specialized, critical thinking becomes by far the most important aspect of the human resource. It is expected that we as entry-level employees, when that time comes, that we have a mental maturity and the ability to critically think that may not have been expected of someone from a previous generation. My appeal then to members of civil society and to all those stakeholders who are involved in this forum is if there's some way that we can advise revamping of the curriculum, or maybe even just activities such as this at the school level to really get minds to be sharpened. And I know I'm talking for a little while,
No, go ahead.
but I
Open
see it.
forum.
I see it as well in my school, at the school level. I'm the president of my school's debate club, the Literary and Debating Society, and I distinctly recall when I now entered Naprima College, being in Form 1, a little more chubby than I am right now. The pride that a Form 6 Napsman would walk around with that blazer, how he was able to stand up in front of a crowd and deliver a speech of some sort. And I think to myself that, maybe it could be a dying art to critically think on the spot, just like attorneys.
You get catch Bartlett.
And as the forums, and as you members of the panel. So I think that, again, just to reiterate the gist of my point, speaking about it, knowing what we have to do as pertains to internet governance, to look beyond that, not to jump the gun so much, but being a key aspect of sustainable development, we need to train our youths on how to do it, on how to do these things.
All right, my future budding politician colleague, thank you for your comment. So the question that Rianne asked about what can we do to generate a culture of trust in society? Anybody would like to take a stab at, what can we do to generate that culture of trust?
I'll take a go at it. So in the panel, I was listening to it, and they were discussing whether there's a cultural difference on, let's say, Caribbean or any geographic location's view on trust when they're comparing them to each other. And the idea is that our perception in the Caribbean, or our cultural perception in the Caribbean towards trust, is different to what's in North America. And I asked the question to myself, is it that there's a difference in culture, or is it that the North America's just in a different phase of adopting technology, and they're having or have already faced the problems a few years back that come with adoption of technology, and they're dealing with them. And here in, say, the Caribbean or the Trinidad, we have not yet faced a lot of those issues. So I'm not sure whether it's a cultural issue, but more the fact that we probably have not yet faced the major issues. We only hear about the issues that have been faced in other societies or in other markets, and then we try to proactively deal with those without have felt the full pain of them, and so we don't fully appreciate that what we're trying to do.
I'm going to make a statement that some of the young people mightn't be aware of. 1990 in Trinidad and Tobago, July 27th. I think for those who don't know, that's when we had an attempted coup. And think about that for a second, that prior to, I think if you look at these stats, prior to that year, you will see or you will hear about people saying, I could keep my doors open, I could walk the streets at night, I could do all these things. And then post-1990, due to, I guess, besides the actual event of then and circumstances thereafter, you will hear people saying, that was when we lost our, innocence. I don't use another word. Lost our innocence. Yeah. And we became a different society then. And the issue of trust was lost in institutions, in just general, in governance. It broke down, we had looters, we had all sorts of things that people would not have seen, some people would not have ever seen ever. And some would have seen, I guess, earlier in history, in Trinidad and Tobago's history. And for those who grew up in that generation, like myself, and those who were born thereafter, they don't know the before. And that level of trust that you would have experienced or felt as a culture or some societal level is somehow lost. And it permeates now, I think, through the online environment where there's this disassociation. I don't want to start using large words like my colleague, Mr. Swift, but the disassociative nature of technology. So basically what you're going to be doing is now that you have, who watches Black Mirror? So Black Mirror, I think, is one of the most profound commentaries on society that have been produced. Black Mirror is through Netflix now, which basically, Black Mirror is basically this, your screen. And every commentary is about how we react to this screen in the center of our lives. And this screen disassociates us from many things. So the more that we rely on the screen, if you walk down the street now, downtown, you go downtown now, you see most people are like this on their screens. If they're in a maxi, they're like this on their screens. If you go into work, they're like this on their screens. They're not talking to people, they're not talking to anyone again, and the level of trust that you're placing in people is lost. And they're looking for trust now elsewhere. So you see, there's this app called, what's it, Saraha? Which I heard about and I understand is still around, still being used. It's taken off all the app stores, but it's still being used somehow. Where the new trust apparently is to be constructively critical of you by telling you honest thoughts about what we think of you. Right? Honest, right? Constructive. And imagine if that's what your perception of trust is. That people are telling you that you're looking like this today, or so, whatever the case is. So the levels of trust and privacy breaks down or changes over time. And to rebuild that culture of trust, as Rihanna is saying, I think it's going to be difficult because I always quote Vin Cerf, who says that privacy, using a different connotation of trust, privacy has changed over time. There's a privacy in the 1800s is different to the 1950s, is different to 2010 and beyond. So the privacy is not like, so when they say the youth are posting information online and so on, he's saying that's not necessarily a bad thing in that way. It's just that how privacy is changing. And therefore, the other side of it, the trust side of it, is also changing. So to develop the culture of trust, we need to look at our new definition of privacy, of security, of society as a whole, and then we build a new culture of trust that has that definition. And you guys, as youth, are the ones to do that, to build that new culture of trust, because if it is we lose trust in our institutions and our school system and you, then there's nothing left, to be honest with you. And that's my philosophical take on the issue.
With respect to trust, maybe you all can help us with some things we are trying to do. Trying to take a survey in Trinidad is difficult because if there's no incentive, nobody participates or few people participate. If there's an incentive, well, first of all, the survey would be skewed. But in addition, people will try to, Trinidadians, they will try to find ways to do the survey multiple times to get that incentive. So again, it's bad. So the question is, how do you come up with a trust model where you could get respondents to honestly provide information for the survey? So we've been working on a trust model mechanism, and we need participants to try it out. So maybe we should contact like you all to help it with, because we need quantity of people. And so maybe I'll talk more about that when we get that going.
Let me ask a question. So you guys were born in what year? 1992? Right. See what I mean?
You're in the wrong century.
But let me ask you a question based on that. Do you trust Amazon.com? When you buy things there, do you trust you'll get it? Yeah. No, you don't trust it. But would you say that there's a level of trust in something like that that is more than trust in something else like government or what they're going to do?
Yeah.
It's an interesting comment.
It's interesting that there's a level of trust in Snapchat that assumes that it doesn't do some of the things it explicitly says it does in their privacy policy.
As for example? Go ahead.
As for example, you said it was private, right? Except that Snapchat collects all the information that you put up and it keeps it. And it shares your location if you turn it on. But even if you don't turn on your location, it collects every single thing that you send that you think is private. They have very clearly,
yes, think about that.
In their, right here, in their privacy policy, they collect 3 kinds of information. Information we get when you use our services. How you interact with our services, how you communicate with with other Snapchatters. We collect content you create on our services. We collect information from and about the devices you use. We collect information from your device's phone book. We collect images and other information from your device's camera and photos. Because when you give it access, you give it access to your camera and photos so that it can access the ones that you want them to send, but you're giving it free access, you know. So if somebody decides on Snapchat, hey, I want to download all the photos, there's nothing in Android that prevents the app from taking every photo in your thing. But what I'm really saying, just using Snapchat as an example, is that people trust based on information they think they have. A lot of people do not really go into detail, do all the research. People consider very few things when we make a decision, especially a decision that we think that is based on information we think we already have. We assume things and we make those decisions. When you start talking about critical thinking, that requires a lot deeper inspection of some of the things that we assume when we're making decisions. And when you're making a decision about trusting something, that's one of the most important decisions you can make, because that's a decision that says, I am about to put something that's important to me, myself, in the hands of a company or another person or a government or something like that. And that should be one of the decisions that one interrogates and thinks about very, very deeply before you do it. And it's one of the things that we don't do very often at all. If it comes from a friend, like WhatsApp and these voice notes, if it comes from a friend, yes, hey, that must be true, and you pass it on. Even if your friend has been known to gossip and send you all sorts of ridiculous things before, you don't think, you just make that action. And that's something that I think everyone needs to sit down and consider. If that's the one thing we take away from today. Trust requires deep interrogation, and we shouldn't just do it willy-nilly.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So we've run out of time, but I definitely don't want to leave without somebody trying to answer Kevin's question. You want to answer? Let Kevin tell his question. Yeah, let Kevin explain it to you. And is there something from you want to say something? Yeah, go ahead. Wait for the mic to come. Yeah, the mic is behind there. We have any more? First of all, do we have any more questions from the youth table? We have one from the back. So we're closing the question. We're closing it now.
There's one more comment.
And there's one more comment. So any more before I start? Any more from the youth table? No. So one in the back comment, and the answer from Kevin's question. Then we're done, right? Good. Go ahead.
Good evening to everyone here, the panel and the audience. So during the second panel, my colleague here asked a question, which I thought encompassed my question at the time. Okay. But going over some of the things that was said, it didn't really answer everything.
Okay.
So, considering that, here's my question. My question was based on the systems that should be adopted instead of adopted. And my thought was, would it make more sense to develop our own software based with in mind our own culture instead of bringing in foreign software that was developed with their culture in mind, trying to adapt our culture to it or adapt the company's culture, as you were saying, to it? Would it make more sense to develop software for that company's culture?
All right, so before the short answer to that question is yes, but can you give an example? I think I want to hear an example so that we could contextualize what you're thinking about. Give an example.
Well, my example would be something along the lines of databases. I know that is something that people use a lot here. And a lot of people, when they see databases, let's say Microsoft Access, for example, when they see that and they see the different, well, first of all, you have to know how to set it up properly. You have to know how to do links. And so you have to basically get training for it. And it would turn a lot of people off. Okay, because when you ask a lot of people now which one they would prefer, even those who work with it, they would always say, well, spreadsheets or something simple, right? So what I was thinking is, we already have a culture where we try to do things, as Mr. was saying, willy-nilly, right? And I was also wondering how we develop our trust and, security. And I was thinking, well, maybe by making use of our own developers down here, we could start from where they are and then have to periodically update the software to where we want it to be.
I'm trying to looking for Lasana. I'm not seeing him.
And before I forget, my colleague here and here wanted him to repeat his question. I can't remember your name, sorry. He is willing to try.
All right. Before we repeat his question, let's ask. First, is it Jarian? Jarian wanted to ask a question. Yeah.
Right. Afternoon, everyone. So in the second panel, there was, let me just get his name. Mr. Bob Semple. He was talking about...
a third panel, yeah.
Third panel, sorry.
Yeah.
He was saying that he thinks there needs to be something to kind of band us together in order to change things, right? So my question is really for anyone in the room, actually. And does anyone in the room know of local initiatives aimed at satisfying the desire for national greatness, right? Ooh. So the idea that local people should realize that they could be great, right? And so are there any groups that sort of believe that people know about and that you see kind of just any day, Monday to Friday, just going after some kind of national greatness? It's not something that I see a lot of. I do see it from time to time.
You mean like the red hats and...
No, like they're not visibly like great, but like they're going towards something that they believe in, right? So, yeah, does anyone know of groups that you believe to yourself are going after some kind of national greatness?
Right, that's another very big question. And there are two comments coming in on the chat, and Kevin is to repeat his question. Yeah? I know, just get the two comments on the chat.
Sorry, they were just asking, what do I mean by national greatness? Yeah.
Oh, your interpretation. Okay, go ahead, yes.
Yeah, just taking Trinidad and Tobago from where it is now and going from point A to wherever you think point B is. So, changing things in a way that benefits more Trinidad and Tobago people. Not necessarily technology-wise, but in general.
Movement, you want a movement.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take...
In terms of anything, policy and projects, yeah.
Okay, let's take the two, I don't know if you remote people out, and then we could wrap this up with
person, really.
One person.
Yeah.
Two comments.
It was more a comment from Hassan Voyu, who said that last year a comment was made for Internet Hall of Fame for Trinidad and Tobago. he wants to throw that out there again.
Okay.
So
that's it. Thanks, Hassan. That's a good idea. So before we get to Kevin's restatement of the question, can you, Patrick, how about take a stab at what's your name? Brandon's question about local developers and.
Yeah, no, that is always an issue. I mean, we we do work with industry, and lots of companies purchase software abroad that isn't designed for our environment. You know, so if it's like from the U.S., it was developed for large operations. So if we take like the power grid, for instance, it was developed for a huge power grid. They pay lots of money for it. They bring it down here. They use 5% of functionality and pay millions in cost. So yeah, that is always a problem in industry. I think you were talking more in terms of social or cultural software applications. I think it may be easier to get some traction there, but out in industry, it's always a problem convincing them that we can do it.
To develop a specialized version, to tweak it to your needs. And I don't know, that might be a way of doing it. And there are open source developers, but I mean, it's probably small compared to, I guess, a proprietary vendor software. The people are specialized into that software.
Okay. All right, so time has run out. So what's
your favorite?
Yeah.
The question of a new oh, okay. Yeah.
So far, we want to trust and privacy, right? But we know fourth industrial revolution is really based on data, right? Big data. Right? That means we need to collect lots of data, right? So if we put too much attention, right, on privacy, so it's very difficult to collect data, right? So, data is like oil and gas, right, for fourth industrial, revolutions. So if we don't have this enough oil and gas, how are we going to develop, this IoT, AI, 5Gs, that kind of stuff, right? So I think we should have a balance between privacy and the share of data. Okay? So how do you think?
Well, no, yeah, of course you want to maintain privacy. One problem we have locally is people just don't like to share data, even if it's anonymized, even if it doesn't have any confidential information in it. If you look at these, what do you call those things? You'll see we started a platform called data.tt to collect data from public sources and ministries and whoever wanted to provide. But unfortunately, for some reason, locally people do not like to share data.
Prof, in Trinidad and Tobago, in terms of IT infrastructure, right, is about 15 years behind other countries, right? So if people, don't want to share data, right, then how the country, develop, for there's IoT, network, the technology, right? Or use these technologies, right?
So here's the challenge. The time has run out, and I think that was a separate question, which you didn't, you fibbed. So it's a different question. The Jarian's question. Here's what to do, Jarian. I would like you to go to Facebook, to the IGF website, post that question, and let's have a discussion there. Can you do that? Kevin, can you go to Facebook and post that question right there on the IGF site, and let's see what happens. Yeah. And no, time. I think
the question was answered in the second panel,
okay.
And you could go back and check the video. But they did say that they do use international software for some things and local software for some things, and it depends on what the use was. Use case.
All right, great. So I'm gonna step out of the limelight now because this is the end of the open forum. Thank you so much. We're gonna now move to the vote of thanks. by the chair-elect for TTMAG. And after that, I think that will be it. So thank you so much. Arch, go ahead.
Right. Okay, thanks, Tracy. Right, I did have a speech prepared for about 30 minutes, but I'm going to shrink that down to about 60 seconds. I'm sure most of you guys want to get away now to do whatever you need to do on a Friday. I know Dave Gosine's got another forum that he's planning. So I'm not going to recap the panels. You can go onto the website. Everything is recorded, so we can go back and recap on that. Discussions are going to continue either between yourselves or on the social media forum. I would like to thank the panelists that took part in making today happen. Thank you for their contributions to that. I'd also like to put a special thank out for those participants that flew into the country to give their views and also contribute to this event. Thank you to the partners that also assisted in making this event happen. Special thanks to the students. This was the first time we got the students to come out. Thank you for participating, and we look forward to seeing you guys next year. Maybe even on the panels yourself, yeah. Thank you to the rapporteurs that volunteered to assist us. The coordinator, Demise, who's been working flat out for the last 5-6 months to put this together. That's Demise at the end there. Wave, Demise. And then finally, last but not least, the TTMAG board, which sounds a bit self-serving because I'm part of that board as well. Right? Just one thing, if anybody's interested in TTMAG, the guys behind who organize this, we do a lot of other things. We do have an open membership to anyone that can apply. You can go to, Tracy, help me out.
Join.
Right,
yes.
mag.tt/join. Fill in online, we'll review, and then we'll get back to you guys on that.
TT/join.
Right, so yep, continue to talk about the discussions that were started here. If you guys have any questions, you can email us. We can give you some further input or give you what we think our opinions are. And we're going to continue the work based on what came out of here. We will take the information, create some outputs, feed them to the IGF at a global level, look at what we can do within Trinidad to continue the discussions, and then also we look forward to seeing you guys back here at IGF 2020. Right, okay, right. So we have some certificates to give out. Dev? Yeah? Yeah. I'd just like to say that we went through a lot of time, effort, and a lot of discussions to make sure that these certificates were of the highest standard.
They're properly worded, huh?
Yeah, they were customized specifically for this event.
They're very well worded and precisely engineered. Yeah. All the ICT people in Trinidad came together and, yeah.
Yeah, 9 directors put in.
So do we call each student?
Yeah, and maybe
yes.
we should go out.
You want to come up?
Yeah, and give them all rights.
All right. That's all right.
Where's the best space to do it?
Was my mic working?
Right there? Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
All right. Sure. Okay. Well, I need to do this then too. Okay, so we have Mark B. Pat. I'm just speaking from the order I'm giving here. There's no preference here. Mark B. Pat.
Yeah,
yes,
man.
Yes.
Mark B. Pat, yeah. Woo!
Thank you so much for participating. Hiran Ramprasad.
Give it up. I'll take it. She's one. She actually is one. She's somebody.
Thank you very much.
I thought the name was made up.
Vikash Pudu Singh. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Brandon Mohammed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Dave Basdeo. Thank you very much. Right. So we have a second set of certificates here. Okay. I have to admit, this is not where I mean my glasses, because the writing is kind of thing. Rohan David. Yeah. Rohan David. See, this is why I needed my glasses. Right there. Yes. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And I would like to talk to you after. Yep.
Thank you.
Got it. All right, Sion Salto. Thank you so very much.
We're going to have a clap.
Yeah.
We're going to have a real clap.
Khalifa Sandiford. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you. Daria Thompson.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Elena LaRoche.
Woo! Yeah! Woo!
Thank you so very much.
Your certificate was the one we engineered the most.
Oh, yes, it was. Huh? Yes, and I was going through the draft over and over. Yes. And, Amelia Lala. Thank you so very much.
On behalf of Hurfik and Vancouver and Maxwell, we would like to thank you for inviting us here to the Internet Governance Forum. It was a very nice experience and it was very informative.
Thank you very much.
Woo!
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
And is that?
I think that's it. Yeah. So we could sit
And is
back.
that, right?
Yes, that's a wrap.
This is it?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.